بدأت الحكاية منذ مئات السنين بين القبائل العربية في صحراء الجزيرة القاحلة، عندما تولد عشق بين الجواد والفارس. ورغم كل الظروف القاسية استمرت شعلة التلاحم بينهم حتى يومنا هذا. وقد حظيت الخيل العربية على مر السنين برعاية إلهية سخر فيها العديد من عشاق الخيل الذين حافظوا على هذا الإرث العتيق جيلا بعد جيل من المشرق إلى المغرب.
We're discussing the Ansata stallions. We'll continue with the Ansata mares. But you just told me about what we said yesterday, that the full brother to Faleh was Farastak.
Yes, and he was imported, I believe, by Bill Lau of Ranchera, and then I don't know what happened to him after that. I don't think he was a very dominant sire,
yes,
if he was used much at all.
In the States?
In the States, yeah.
But he had some get in the...
I'm not sure, but what he might have raced in Egypt before he was imported. It seems to me possibility.
I see. The Ansata mares, you started with the Binti Zafarana and Binti Mabruka first? Then...
First was Bint Mabruka, then Bint Zafarana, those two together.
Yes.
Then Bint Bukra.
How many years was that after the first import?
The first import was 59, and she came in, I think it was 64 or 65, I'd have to look.
Okay.
Whichever her first foal was born was the next year.
Yes.
And then we bought Fuller, which we renamed Bint Nazir, and Bint Maisuna. So that's 5.
And that was
Maisuna was with the police department.
Yes.
And we bought her and Bint Nazir at the same time. Doug Marshall bought several of the horses from the police. I think he bought Cleopatra, and he bought something for Serenity. I forget which one it was.
So they were good. They were good enough for your breeding program on one hand. On the other hand, they were sitting in the police department.
Well, the EIO, of course, they sold horses.
Oh.
And the police often bought horses from them. So I suppose those were some that had been sold. They were sold off from the EIO. Yeah. I don't know if they were auctioned or given or what at the time, but they had a fairly good number that they were breeding from. And also they had this really very pretty Nazir son called Hassan. One that we had looked at when we bought Ibn Halima, was the same age, and he was very pretty. Matter of fact, we liked him a lot, and he was a Hadban. So they were using him. So they had a breeding program of their own for mounting their officers. And
Bint Mabruka was, I think, the closest to your heart?
Yeah, she was really special. She, you know, and I'm sure you've had this happen when you really connect with something, and it just grabs you right here.
Yes.
And she had those, really big black eyes, and she was very elegant with a long neck and just an elegant filly. And when I saw her, it was just like the two. There was some magnetic force there. And I may have mentioned to you that von Zantner at 12 o'clock always blew the bugle to have all the horses go into the barns for feeding. So you know how a horse is. I mean, when it's ready for feeding time, it's ready to go. And Donna and I were standing there with her, and the bugle blew, and everything ran to be led into the barns. And she didn't move. She stayed with me until we decided to leave and walk back to the office. And then she left and went to eat. So it was you know, it was just that bond that was, I don't know if she saw an American passport or what in the future, but she got one. she got one.
Yes. She did very well for you. What did the Bint Mabruka do?
Bint Mabruka?
At Ansata, yes.
Well, regrettably, she did 3 stallions, but unfortunately, she got colitis X and passed away. Actually, she also had a filly, which died of pneumonia while we were in South America.
The filly was by
Ibn Halima.
Ibn Halima. And she produced also Shah Zaman.
Shah Zaman, Ibn Sudan, and Abbas Pasha.
Abbas Pasha.
All 3 superstar stallions. I mean, you couldn't ask a mare. I mean, if she only produced one of those, she'd have been famous. But of course, Abbas Pasha went to the Babson farm.
Yes.
Sudan and Shah Zaman stayed with us and were used heavily, and they had also been leased out at different times. And then, of course, Count Federico bought half interest in Shah Zaman when he was a mature stallion much later. But when he went to South America, Shah Zaman came back to us. Unfortunately, the horse had been kicked badly in the heart, and he didn't stay with us too long after that.
So he went to South America, Shah Zaman?
No, Federico took all of his horses from Florida because he had a nice Egyptian group.
In America?
In America. He bought most of Doug Griffith's Egyptian herd. Eventually, he decided to sell the farm and send everything to South America. So he had half interest in Shah Zaman, but we had insisted that the horse could not leave the country when we sold him.
Yes.
So he came back to us.
I see.
But the management at the farm...
So did he die early?
He died before he should have, yeah. He died, I guess, a few months after he came back.
What age did he die?
Oh, I don't remember. I mean, he was a mature stallion.
Yeah. But he also was very influential in your program.
Shah Zaman, yes, was very dominant.
Yeah.
I think he was very dominant for the strong, short-coupled bodies and the super top lines and really high tail carriage, and also the long, laid-back shoulder, very much which he inherited from Moroffic. And he put a good length of neck on and good size in general, and the beautiful eyes. Sometimes the longer foreface, which he had. He had a pleasing head, but as I said, it was not extreme. Although, the horse won a number of championships in Class A competition, major Class A competition. So he was a fine breeding stallion as well as a good show horse.
Back to Mabruka, Judy. Do you think Mabruka represented the mother, the grandmother of the Saklawi Muniyat al-Nufus line, or she represented something else as a mare?
I think, no, she was pretty much the Moniyat line, but she didn't look like Moniyat. She had the Nazir influence, but she was the longer lined horse. As she and Bint Mona were somewhat similar, although Bint Mabruka was better conformed, as was her mother. But I think that they definitely had the Saklawi Moniyat influence, because if you look at Bint Mabruka's sons, they were definitely more to that line. You look at Sudan, he had a very strong body, but again, the extreme neck and more reach than what, say, the Damans had or some of the Hadbans. It was different. It had its own style or type.
I see.
Relatively.
Yes.
Relatively. Nothing is set in stone. But that family, if you look at the Moniyat family over the years, even with the Al Eldin daughters that went on to Europe and so forth, they had quite a bit of reach. They were a longer lined horse, let's put it that way.
Yes.
Longer lines, longer body, longer necks, longer heads.
Yes. Does it usually come together? When it is a longer line, it's a longer neck, it's a longer head. Is that, correlated somehow?
Correlated in what?
Genetically?
I think it's all a matter of selection. But to me, if we get into the breeding aspect, I feel like the female line is particularly strong. even the thoroughbred breeders greatly value the female lines when they're selecting for breeding good racehorses.
Yes.
Scientifically, it maybe doesn't sound correct, but when you put it into practice, as we did over 50 years, we could pretty well guarantee what that mother line was going to produce or what she might produce bred to a particular stallion, whereas in some cases, the female line carried everything, and then maybe in another case, the stallion would be somewhat dominant. But if you got a filly or a mare and bred that back into the same female line where you're doubling the female line of the sire and the dam, that's where I found you pick up the consistency in the type that family represents.
Of the female line.
Of the female line.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, for example, if you take Ajmal Akud, you take Marwan, and some of Halim Shah, that's a perfect example of that particular kind of breeding.
Doubling of the same female line.
Doubling of the same female line.
Yes.
Tail female.
Tail female.
Tail female.
Tail female
Yeah,
line.
very powerful. Very, very powerful.